Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and to another installment in the Sydney Railroad build. If you're watching last time, you'll have seen me take care of a whole load of miscellaneous tasks and also the wiring and switch machine installation for the two remaining staging yards. This week I'm going to build and install all the control panels for those staging yards, in fact for all the staging yards. And although it was a fairly straightforward task, it's a proof of the old adage that there is no task so simple that it cannot be fouled up. So be sure to look for the outtake embedded in the video. Anyway, without further ado, let's just head out to the workshop and get busy. Well, here is the first of the new design of control panels. You may recall a few months ago that I built one prototype, and there it is down there. It's still workable, even though it's no longer mounted. Here we can see how it fits in with the rest of the railroad. If I take a step back, we can see the lower staging and main staging below it. There is the mezzanine staging behind it, and running across the top is the benchwork for the upper deck that will ultimately support the harbour and the intermodal yard. At the moment it's still a plywood top with a paper overlay. Ultimately it'll be replaced with printed and engraved aluminum, but I want to make sure I got everything right before I order that, because I don't want to have to order it twice. It's on hinges, so I can fold it out to work on it or to gain access to the staging tracks behind it. As you can see, there are no wires to it at the moment. I was supposed to have all the main wires into it already, but the terminal blocks that I bought to do that were no good. The big ones that I've got are too large to fit in here, so I had to buy some smaller ones, and they turned out to be garbage. So I've had to remove those and order some more. Anyway, the height of the control panel is such that it goes back without risk of pinching fingers here. There's about 1.25 inches of clearance, and it just sits on these two outriggers. This piece here will ultimately do double duty. It supports the back of the control panel when it's in its normal position, and the bar across the middle will keep the wires up off the staging yard tracks. Well, as I can't finish this control panel just yet, I've decided to start on the others. So I will walk you through the steps involved and just point out any adjustments that need to be made for the finished aluminum faceplates. Well, here are the track diagrams for the remaining staging yard panels. They are all glued to a piece of 3/16 plywood, the same stuff that I use for the safety fences. This little one wouldn't quite fit on the same strip. I got the 4 big ones out of 1/8 foot strip of plywood and had to cut another one for the small panel. Anyway, the next thing to do is to separate those and then trim them to size using the table saw and the miter saw. So let me do that and I'll be right back. Well, here are all the frame pieces finished. I started off by cutting strips 1 5/8 wide, and then mitered the ends on the miter saw and cut a groove in them using 2 passes with a table saw. When I do the finished ones with the aluminum, I will only need 1 pass, because it will be 3mm aluminum and the blade gives an 1/8 inch curve, so they'll be perfect, allowing a little bit of clearance without too much slop. Anyway, those strips are now ready to build into frames for the control panels, but before I do that, I want to get most of the holes drilled. The push buttons for the routing require some quite large holes. I think it's 11/32, but I'll have to check. And the toggle switches for the isolating areas need 1/4 inch holes. So let me do all those and I will be right back. Well, here are the face plates with all the holes drilled in them. Some of the holes are not particularly neat, but then it's always going to be that way drilling through paper, and it doesn't really matter because they are only temporary anyway. So with that task completed, the next thing to do is to get the frames glued up around them. So let me do that quickly and I will be right back. This is a little trick that I learned a long time ago in a joinery shop when I was making jewellery boxes. Put the four sides in the right order, so long, short, and then tape them together with masking tape like so, and then turn them over. Let me do that. Let me put the camera down so I can do that quickly. Here they are turned over. And now all I've got to do is put glue on all the angled faces, slot the top in. It doesn't matter which one. I'm going to do it in one of the two middle ones. And I've just realised that I've made them the wrong size, so I'm going to have to shorten some of them. So let me go away, do that, and I'll be right back. Well, now they are the right length. All 8 of them were the same. I'm just glad I cut them too long instead of too short, because it was a simple matter to trim them. It would have been really annoying if they were too short and I had to start again. Anyway, as I was saying, once the top panel is in the groove, I can just put glue in all the mitre joints and then fold it up and then tape it together at the end. And the masking tape holds it in place and forms the clamp. So let me just assemble all 4 of the panels and I'll be right back. Well, there are all 4 panels framed up. All I can sensibly do now is wait for the glue to go hard. So let me just go away for a couple of hours and I will come back later. Well, I've now cleaned up all the edges, given them a good sanding, and I've also installed the backing pieces that I need to attach all the components. Each of the big push button switches needs one of these inch square circuit boards, and that's what the side panels are for. And then the toggle switches need terminal blocks like these. These are not the ones that are going in these control panels. I've got some smaller ones on order, but they haven't arrived yet. Some of the panels, like these 2 at the front, the big ones would actually fit, but the 2 panels for the main staging guard, they just require too many of them. For example, there's 15 switches in a row here, so I need 30 terminals, and they just will not fit. So that's why I had to order some smaller ones. The first ones I ordered were no good, so I'm going to send those back. I've got some more, they should be arriving today. But I have plenty to get on with before they get here. I need to install all these switches and other miscellaneous bits and pieces, so let me get on with that and I will be right back. Well, I have now mounted all the switches and circuit boards except for one. I don't have quite enough, so I'm going to have to steal the extra one from the prototype board that I built a few months ago. And then I'll have 8 spares. The next task is to attach these cables to the circuit boards. And that's a significant task because there are 5 wires per switch and I've got about 60 switches, so a lot of wires to do. So let me get on with that and I will be right back. Well, that is all the push buttons wired up on one of the control panels. This is the one for the mezzanine staging area. Here's the one that I took from the original prototype panel, and it's from a different batch of push buttons. The specification has changed since I ordered them, and the cable connectors are different, so I used a different color masking tape just to identify it. And all the others from the first batch, I will use the tan tape as well. And you may be wondering why I'm not using electrical tape. That's because I have had problems with electrical tape peeling off, whereas masking tape tends to stick better, so that's why I'm using it. It really doesn't matter because I'm not taping bare ends. I'm basically just using the tape as cable clips. So that's one down, 3 more to go, and then that'll be all I can do until I have the rest of the hardware. Well, while I was working this morning, the terminal blocks arrived, so I went back to the first control panel and I have now finished all the internal wiring. Here we can see where I installed the terminal blocks. And although a full-size one would have fitted there, I really didn't have any room here. Even these are a little bit too big, which is why the last 6 terminals are placed sideways. Anyway, the technique here is to run small wires from the terminal block to the switch, basically akin to the feeder wires to the track. And then the longer wires to the control panel will be the heavier gauge, the same as the bus wires. Anyway, those long wires back to the railroad will be the next step in this control panel. So let me get back to work and I will be right back. Well, here are the next 3 control panels with all the internal components installed, well, most of them anyway. I've still got to solder all these wires to the switches, but I'll do that after I've got them mounted because the soldering iron's already plugged in over the other side. These vacant holes here are for LEDs to show which tracks are live. This is for one end of the main staging yard. The other similar panel at the other end has the on-off switches for the main yard tracks. So these just get repeater LEDs instead. But I've still got to figure out exactly what I need in the way of electronics for that. I'm hoping it's just a case of installing an LED with a resistor in series, but I don't yet know what value of resistor I need. So I'm going to have to research that. But until then, I've just got the placeholders. And it may seem like this is a lot of work to do for temporary control panels, but most of it is already done for the permanent ones, because all the internals will just be taken out and installed in the new frame. So there is only a small amount of work that gets duplicated. Most of it is done once. Well, this morning I have finished installing all the staging yard control panels. There's 5 of them. There will be a whole load more control panels at the same level. There'll be one in here for the west end of the intermodal yard. There will be at least one, probably 2 more panels in here for the short line, and maybe another one on the end. I haven't decided whether I will combine that with the one here. Lastly, there will be a much bigger control panel over the workbench that will hinge up underneath the upper level when not in use, and that will be for the control of the main harbour area. I have to put these control panels down here because there is insufficient fascia depth for the number of controls that I will need. Elsewhere on the upper deck, they will just be mounted on the fascia. Something else I did was to make a leg to support these panels when they're open. I decided they're a little bit on the heavy side, so I don't want to have them get left and risk breaking them if I push down on them. So I've put a leg. I've got that leg, so it just supports them, and it works for any of them. And then when not in use, it stores inside the benchwork. Let me just show you that. There are 2 tabs there, and another one at the front. It can go either way up, it really doesn't matter. Put those 2 corners on there, and left that in there, and it can't fall out. And that is completely out of the way because there are no switch machines anywhere near that. Haven't decided yet, but I might build another one and store it at the other end. Anyway, something else I did this morning was to finish the Mulwin River Bridge. I presented a video on that a few weeks ago, and yes, that's right, I am very much out of sequence because I've been working on multiple tasks intermittently, but I'm trying to break the videos into sensible segments. Anyway, the next task is to bring back the soldering iron and to solder all the wires to the backs of the switches. So let me do that, and I'll be right back. Well, that's all for this week. I hope you enjoyed the video, found it useful or interesting or both. Next week it'll be back to wiring, and I hope to see you back here for that. So in the meantime, thanks for watching and bye for now.